everyone. Welcome to our live, which is all about feeding the family. I'm just going to start Instagram Live as well. Maybe. Oh, we're getting the countdown. Oh, God, that's a long one. Oh, good. Hey, everyone.
Hi.
So my name's Alicia.
And I'm Demi.
We're both dietitians and both sports dietitians as well. And we both work at Compete. Look at us matching today. So nice. And we thought, why don't we both jump on, because it makes sense. We're both in like similar phases of life in terms of family life, but also very different. We were talking about that just before this session. I was like sharing the level of busy that it has become as my kids have got older, and the same level of busy as young kids, but just totally different and flipped. So we come on as dietitians, but also as mums. And one thing about the academy, I guess, is that we're not going to be covering the clinical side of feeding the family today. Like, that's not what we're going to cover in, a half-hour session. And we want this to be an invitation to chat, reach out, ask questions, but also really help all of you really help, like, just meet the family or the child or the parent where they're at better, build that empathy. And we know that really fast track way to create change and behavior change and improvement and progress in your clients is rapport building. So if we can build that connection, then happy days. That will be such a great thing. So I just realized we're live on Compete Nutrition Performance. So we're going to swap over on our live. Hi, everyone. We're going to go over to Compete Academy. Oh, good. No, discard video. We're having a really good time. Do you know, the first time we did this, I was so prepared. All right. I was like, these names shouldn't be on Academy. All right, here we go. All right, let's try again. So I'll do a little welcome in here. All right, we're just connecting to the right Instagram. You want to just mute on your end, hun? It's just coming through with a little bit of sound. Thanks, lovely.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. Do not apologize. That is the way we work at the moment. All right. So massive welcome, everyone. Welcome to you on Compete Academy page. We've just gone live on the wrong page on Instagram. Professional. I'm Alicia. This is Demi, both dietitians, sports dietitians, and mums. So feeding the family, I guess, to launch in, it is going to, and our course that we've just released is very much around the whole, I guess, age range from baby, toddler, all the way through adolescence. And we thought that was the best way to capture it because, yes, it's a big span of years, but it's really, it was just really applicable to kind of break it down into those little age brackets, the different challenges. And if we think about dietitians as problem solvers, then really navigating those problems, those challenges that will come across in our work with family and kids and parents, it was just really valid to include all of it. So we're going to include just a little bit today, aren't we?
Yeah, just a snapshot of some of the key points that we've got from that course.
Yeah, knowing that we can cover like so much, but then also appreciating that we've only got 20 minutes plus questions, we thought we would cover mainly around that introduction to food and that toddler, young child age range, for the main reason that it's often where the biggest challenges can come across or become really obvious. And also, I think as a practitioner, trying to navigate that, is it fussy eating? Is it more? What kind of influences can I have on the environment as a practitioner are just really valid. So I think, like, to get started, hopefully most are aware of the Ellen Sattler approach to feeding, which is around that division of responsibility. But in case this is new, which is totally fine, it's appreciating that the parent or the main carer in the position of feeding the child is in charge of the decision around when the child will eat and also what they have on their plate or what's in the menu, which is often the language I'll use in the home, versus the child being able to be in control of the decision of if they actually eat and how much they eat of that food. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think like having that conversation then to the parents about that is a really great way to empower them when it comes to a lot of that, keeping it simple. So there's not those big, like, don't throw a whole bunch of, do you want this or this or this or this, like too many things to decide from. So the parent makes that decision, then the child just chooses if they do want to eat it and how much of that they have. So it's still honoring the child's appetite and hunger
and safety and all those types of things. And I think it, like any overarching system or guide, it's not perfect. It does come with like little intricacies of question marks and difficulties, and it's like, well, what about this situation, and what about this situation? And I think that's really valid in terms of all these different situations you'll be able to talk to your clients about and work through with them. But as an overarching concept, it works really beautifully in just gaining a whole lot of confidence of like, actually my role is sorted here. It's now up to me to let my child sort their side of this bargain, this side of the agreement, right? So when we're thinking about like that division of responsibility and setting the parent up with the when and the what, I think the first thing you want to really make sure you're doing in a session with a young family or an adolescent with their parent present is getting a better idea of what their life is like, what's their scheduling, what are their logistical challenges, really building up to a really great and strong knowledge of their current barriers. Now, their barriers might be logistical, they might be financial, they might be skill-based, but their barriers may also be around confusion, mood, alongside panic, fear, all these different emotions as well. So it can be tied to the relationship that the parent has with food and body. There can be alongside a whole lot of other things. So taking the time to really appreciate the environment that that child and that parent is in, whether that's in the home or in the school, is all really valid. For example, like I remember talking to a adolescent athlete, and their home environment was amazing. However, they came to us because they're like, wow, she gets home and she actually binges. Like it was a real like clinical binge every day after school. And the home situation was so supportive. It was great. There was no red flags, but it wasn't until we moved into that school environment that we realized where those flags were happening, those challenges were happening, and we were able to focus more on that, or focus on how we prepared for those challenges moving in. So taking the time to listen. And if they aren't sure how to answer the question, say you ask around, what's your language like at the table, or what's your tone of voice, and, how do you approach dinner time? How do you feel approaching dinner time? If they're not sure, then you move from listening into encouraging them how to notice, so that you've got more intel going into that future conversation and consult setting, if that's where you are.
Yeah, and I think one of the really important things there is actually that wisdom that does come with listening. Yeah. So you don't have to have that experience as a parent to really empower other parents in this space. You just have to listen and ask, so you can get a clear picture of where they're at and what that looks like and what their struggles are, to make them feel heard and validated, and then know where to start with them.
Yeah, it's good you mentioned that, because one of the questions that did come through was around, how I really struggle with imposter syndrome and feeling inadequate when I'm working with families because I'm not a parent myself. And I challenge you to kind of go, you know what, absolutely, there will be things you miss. There will be things you don't understand yet or cannot fully empathize with yet. But the shortcut to empathy is listening and hearing story. And the more that you place yourself in a position to hear story, to be able to listen and to really appreciate the different challenges, you are absolutely the best person to be with them on navigating those challenges. So never think that you're not enough, but you can always be more in terms of how you show up and how you can empathize in a conversation. You never should go into a consult thinking I am the expert here, because I can assure you the person with you, that family alongside you, is the expert in their life, even if you're the expert in nutrition. So it's always that marriage of information and discussion, rather than it being this one-sided, I guess, display of information on one end. So yeah, I think, like, to answer that question now felt like a good time.
Yeah, agree. So then when we, I guess, further clarify that when and what, let's kind of talk about that, or plating up the meal. So I guess the biggest thing to help reduce that overwhelm and really empower a parent, whether starting at that younger child, is just to cook one meal. Keep it simple, but it can look a lot in like different ways. So how do you plate up that one meal?
And it's interesting because sometimes that's the reason they're coming to you. is to be like, I am currently cooking a whole lot of different meals. I'm feeling completely confused, completely overwhelmed. How do I get to the point where I'm just cooking one meal for the family? Because this child likes this child has a meltdown if I cook this, like, where am I at? And so sometimes they're coming to you for advice before the fact, and that's wonderful because you can set themselves up for that environment from the start. But more often than not, you're like their last port of call of like, I am at my wit's end. What can I do from here? So that's where you really want to make sure that you're getting that understanding the environment, but also being able to empower them to be like, okay, well, what's the goal? Like, what's success mean to you right now? Is it eating the same meal at the same time, one time a week? Or are we looking for that more consistently? And getting an idea of what success is for them will then allow you to move toward that. Now, when you're looking at one meal, one time, that sounds really simple, right? As a dietitian without kids, I probably would have been like, well, you just cook a meal, and if they don't eat, they don't eat it. Or, but the truth is, when you get to that meal time, you are often exhausted. Your child is often exhausted. You've just put in effort to cook this meal, and you're not ready for someone to throw it back in your face or tell them that it's disgusting or tell you that you don't like any of that and you're not going to eat anything. Like, it's just like everyone is kind of at a really heightened point of emotion at that time. So yes, it's easy in concept to say just eat the same meal same time, but it's nicer to know, okay, I've done all the steps to help this happen in a calmer way. So the steps that you can empower your parent or your carer with if they are having mealtime drama and stress are around, yes, you can cook the same meal at the same time, but the way you plate that and the way you present that and the language you use and the play you use and the openness to learning that you use is actually going to change everything. So if, for example, they're plating let's use stir fry, I feel like this is like such a good example, all curries where it's all mixed meals and wet dishes and a muddle of like noodles or rice together with all the color, it's very unlikely that most kids will eat that. It doesn't mean they're a fussy eater. It means they're an uncomfortable human looking at that and not knowing where to start and not feeling safe to try any of it. However, if you can start to help that parent plate that stir fry separately, maybe the sauce is on the side, maybe the stir fry veggies are on their own, rice is on their own, and maybe some, stir fried chickens on their own. That separation isn't an issue. It's not something to, I think sometimes people are like, oh, I shouldn't do that, or God, they're going to do that forever. I'm going to assure you they won't. The separation of meals is a really great way to empower that little small human who's still learning to like food to be able to mix and try and muddy and just get safe and just get comfortable. So like those types of strategies are absolutely your place and things that you can empower them with to help them feel more comfortable of going, okay, I'd love my children to eat the same food as us. Where do I start? And alongside that plating is the safe food. So do you want to cover that?
So having
yes.
So especially if there's a whole lot of new foods or new textures, different things, having, at least one or two safe foods, so foods that the child really enjoys and feels really safe and comfortable eating on the plate can just reduce their anxiety and make them feel a lot more comfortable and accepting. So that's a really nice way. And also, like, I found having a safe, familiar way to plate it up as well. So I know personally in my house, it'll be a lot more safer and successful if we plate everything up family style. So it's separated,
so nice.
but it's all on different bowls in the middle. And why I found that worked really well is because that's what they were doing at daycare.
Nice. That's
so
really nice.
It's like, looking at those different environments and finding out that, like when I sat down with my son, I asked him, like, do you really enjoy to eat that way? He goes, yeah, I really like it. He finds it so fun. He has his own like little mini tongs and he dishes stuff up, and it's like play as well for him rather than just plating it up separately. So there's a whole range of ways. Yeah. Whilst I have more dishes to do, a lot more enjoyment, a lot more gets eaten, and a lot more curiosity as well.
Yeah, and I think when you're at the end of your tether, right, and this food that you're plating up to you is really normal and just should be enjoyed. Like, it's delicious food. Why are you making a fuss? I think it's really important to step back and think, well, how much experience has this child got of trying this food or eating this food, or how often have they seen it? And to look at a food objectively and go, holy shit, this is actually, sorry, language, this is actually really overwhelming or intimidating or something they've never seen before, remembering they're brand new to learning this. So reminding the parent of going, they've got to learn at the same time as you're playing these things up. So adding that safe food allows them to learn at the same time as also feeling safe. The goal isn't to have them eating all the food every time that's plated up. There will absolutely be resistance. There will be vulnerability. There will be some tannies. The goal is really with the safe food and also the way of plating is to get them to sit up and feel calm when they sit up there, knowing that I'm excited for part of this meal, or I know I can eat some of this meal. Sometimes I liken that whole stir fry concept to like my Cambodia experience where I had this plate of fried tarantulas handed to me and I was like horrified at this whole thing of like, okay, yeah, cool. This is really normalized in the way that they were feeding them like and eating, but this is not normalized in my setting and I don't feel safe and I don't feel comfortable. So think of the stir fry like that. What you want to do is make sure that fear and that objection as you see that food that you don't know is calmed by something you do know or you can be excited for. And that can be something as simple as pasta or blueberries or yogurt or, it can be any of those things. And having, different sweet foods alongside meals is totally fine. Like it's just food.
Yeah, no rules.
Yeah.
That's no rules.
Yeah. So just neutralizing that I think is really powerful.
Yeah. And just empowering their curiosity by, maybe, finding other ways to make it fun. Like having a glass of water and seeing if stuff sinks or floats, and then if they can, before they put it in the water, can they tell you how it feels, or like, talking the parent through different activities like that can be hugely successful for getting them to accept a food. So yeah,
I think that's the thing, right? Because success is often measured of like, well, my child should just eat everything, or I want my child to eat everything. And the truth is that we all don't eat everything. And if you can feel comfortable for them to at least try it and allow them to feel comfortable even just smelling it or touching it and being able to talk about what it is as a food, as an object, rather than something you have to eat, it just becomes something to explore. It becomes curiosity, it becomes fun, as you said. And those experiments, and just like taking it back, going, oh, you don't really want to try that yet, that's okay, do you feel ready to touch it? Can you tell me if it's soft or hard? And those types of strategies, giving your parent, the parents that you're working with, those are just so empowering and really fun, to be honest. And it probably brings up that same point as the word yet.
This is our favorite addiction, I would say.
Yet is very powerful for you watching as well. Like I think for everyone, adding the word yet to a lot of identity statements is very, very important.
Yes, I was talking about it just with my own work.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Yeah, yet is really interesting. And they're probably like, what are you talking about? So yet is basically, I think we've all done it. And let's use the mushroom as an example. Like, I don't like mushrooms. Or I don't like mushrooms. That's an identity statement. And what happens is if it gets repeated by yourself or by others around you, like your parents, like, oh, don't give, such and such mushrooms, I don't like it. Or you don't like mushrooms, do you? You can give them to me. It becomes part of your identity. It's a very small part of your identity, but that is, you're someone who doesn't like mushrooms. And you become shut down to any concept of even trying to like mushrooms or exploring mushrooms. What happens if you add the word yet to that is, I don't like mushrooms yet, or you don't like mushrooms yet, or you're still learning to like mushrooms, is that's an invitation to continue to explore. It's not a definitive sentence. It's not a definitive identity or statement. And so the word yet opens up the possibility of exploration, mistakes, errors, but also discovery. So it's really powerful to be able to, give your parents that you're working with or the children as well the power of that word. So highly recommend if that's not something you've done previously with kids that are finding it hard to feel comfortable in trying new foods or feeling like they don't like any foods. We've covered like the play or language. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to language, or the hardest thing is probably to stay neutral when they're trying foods. Well, for me personally, as a parent who likes to celebrate the wins, and I know you feel quite similarly, Leash, is keeping those celebrations and those reactions like really neutral. Like when you're asking how they found a food, or what they felt about the food or a meal, like not having these massive celebrations. even though that's internally really what the parent wants to do. If they've tried something they've been resistant
or they've
to,
eaten like their veggies tonight, for example.
Yeah.
It's really, you know, tempting, I guess, to have that, like for the parent to have that excitement, right? And sharing that, oh my gosh, that's so good. And wow, you're such a good boy, you're such a good girl, or you can definitely have dessert after that. And all those types of language pieces are really, really powerful in the way of placing, say, something like vegetables on a pedestal. Suddenly they've got a morality of good versus bad, and that child is good versus bad depending on their behavior around food. And so even though it's well intentioned, that celebration can be just as damaging at times as the negative of like you know, using food as a bargaining tool, but also placing that morality on food or different foods on the plate. And you know, an example of veggies and salads seems like an easy grab there. So exploring the language with your clients that you're working with is really important. What kind of language are you using around food before you eat? What kind of language is coming up at the table? What kind of language is coming up at the end of your meal? And just being able to challenge that and be able to create, you know, that neutral language. And even if the main message that you're having with parents is your job is to stay calm in this situation, even though sometimes it's really challenging. And it won't always happen, by the way. Success as a parent at a table, I think, is to stay calm. Like, honestly, it's to be that calm thing. And you will have things thrown at your face. You will have massive objections. You will have people leave with the biggest of dramatic exits. But if you can stay calm in that moment and have that really great reflective moment with the child, it does definitely help to then have them feel ready to come back. But yeah, it's why as a clinician you need to have such a great idea of what environment is this in, what kind of things can we work on, what kind of things are actually working well already, so you can have that focus and priority area really set when you're having those conversations.
Yeah, and it brings you back right around to that listening and that wisdom that comes with listening. Definitely. When you're just hearing the parents or the children talk about food and picking up on those language red flags that might be there.
I feel like language, most often a parent can definitely reflect back to you even from the first time you converse, is like what they're serving up or what they're able to do or what they're seeing. But I feel like language is often the one that requires a little bit more noticing and might take a fair few, you know, weeks or months to really get to a point where they are aware of the different language being used and how to challenge that in themselves, but also in others.
Or even that concept between like having a view of how they want their children to feel and view about food, but they're not mirroring that themselves in that language, and that disconnect there. And the same goes for body when we're talking about body image as well.
Yeah, there's a reason why I think parents, the first time they really gain insight or a will to want to do better in terms of their relationship with food and body is often after they've had a baby. And it's because they've got that self-awareness to go, I actually want this better for someone else. And it's not just about self. So it is really interesting that I think a lot of clients that we see around relationship with food and body are new parents because of that. So I think being aware of that connection is really important. We're now going to open up to questions. So if you have questions, please pop them through either on Insta or on Zoom. And while you're doing that, we do have a few that have been sent through already. All right, question for you, Deb. How do you work with a child when you feel like the parent is actually a contributing factor to the problem or the challenge that they're having?
Yeah, so I think it's unfortunately a common one, but I think one of the things that you really have to do first is build that rapport with that parent in that session, particularly if it's a younger child. You know, the parent is going to be the main one that you're working with. So you really need to make sure that you're on the same page and understand their readiness to make change and where they're at and what success looks like for them and what their goal is, and meet them where they're at there, and working through, you know, their trauma or their background or their understanding and their relationship with food alongside that as well, and just acknowledging that, you know, why they feel a certain way and you know what that means to them, and just asking those questions and having that reflective active listening through that, because if you're going to jump on that foot and really attack, you know, it might be really embedded in their identity.
100%. So, and it may not even be around their relationship with food. It may be that, you know, they're really struggling with logistics or mental health currently, and it means that they can't show up as their best self, you know, at the dinner table, or by the time dinner comes around, and their capacity may be super low. And I think that's where appreciating that you're not just meeting that child that you're, you know, looking to improve their nutrition intake of, you're meeting with the whole family and the environment. But if you can gain rapport with that parent, and trust with that parent, you will do incredible things. And I think absolutely this is a common trend. We're at a point where parents currently have lived their whole lives through that diet culture time frame, really. And so being aware that that can be a challenge, and being aware that so many beliefs around food and body are embedded within who they are, you've got to make sure that you have really good awareness in your conversation, but also be ready for that vulnerability, because there's a chance that they'll be coming to you not even aware that there is an issue there. So they're almost in that pre-contemplation phase, if you like. So it can be really, really challenging.
I think picking up on those, like if they get quite distressed or, you know, with certain suggestions or questions, or, you know, then it's like, I'm picking up that, you know, you feel quite strongly like about this. You want to tell me a little bit about it. And like, yeah, just being really aware of what's going on and not trying to push.
Yeah, I love that. Because at the same time, and I know we've talked about this previously as well, is that sometimes as dietitians, we want to fix everything all at once. But stuff like this takes a whole lot of time. It takes a whole lot of trust and buy-in. And it might be that it's a really slow burn. But if you burn them from the very start in the way of how fast you go or how fast you disagree or challenge them, you may lose them altogether and not get any impact. So you've got to choose what things that are ready to have in the conversation, while being really mindful of things that you might park to the side for a later conversation or be aware of in how you broach those conversations. It is an absolute challenge, and there's no right or wrong way. And I can highly recommend supervision when you are working with families for this very reason, because sometimes you are holding a whole lot of space for this family dynamic, but also alongside that, you may need support in talking through different options of how you might set up different conversations and plans forward. So yeah, the other thing we probably haven't covered in that whole thing is, I think sometimes it can bring up triggers for ourselves as well, having these conversations or things in the home. So
yeah, absolutely been there.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. So it probably ties into this other question we've had of like, what about resistant or pre-contemplation phase adolescence? Because how often do we get parents or recommended coaches or GPs going, you need to go see a dietitian to these teenagers? So the parents come along maybe ready for that conversation, but the child's not so ready.
Love that. I think then it's all about, you know, what's important to that adolescent, not just what's important to mum or dad or the carer, but, you know, is it sport, is it, you know, their health, or what are they wanting to improve, or what's something in their life that they really enjoy that's really important to them, or who's really important to them, like is there someone else in terms of like a coach, or you know,
that aspirational piece,
that you can really work in, so that you can get that buy-in.
Actually, the session with Ben Desborough really sticks with me. Can still in the adolescent nutrition module in the academy. It's just, he's such a powerhouse in this space, and the way that he talked about like the rocket analogy and all those types of things about what you can do with adolescence and what the challenges are. Highly recommend that one. So yeah, I'm just aware of time. But the last question we have, unless some more have come through here. Whoa, sorry, everyone. Good. Doing well. Is how do you know if it is more than fussy eating in a child? So this is sometimes a question you'll have from parents. It's definitely something that I have navigated a lot, even with parent friends, of like, okay, what are we actually dealing with here? I feel like it's more than just fussy eating. Do you have any tips in working with that in terms of like working alongside the parent?
Yeah, I think it's familiarizing yourself a lot with those red flags and ARFID. So, you know, going through weight loss, like texture, color, swallowing, all of those kind of issues that, you know, might be happening, rather than the child just not wanting to eat certain foods. But also going through like all of the things that we've talked around like, you know, have they done the food play and those environments and the separating of plating up of different ways, and, you know, what have they actually tried already to get that information before you can decide what it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the other piece to that is then that whole other conversation of neurodivergence and the relationship that has with ARFID and texture and all those things around food, which we'll definitely be covering soon in another module for that reason, because I think it's just such an important topic. And it's not that they're you know, it should change how, or our capacity to be able to work with all these type of people. It's more just appreciating that there's a diversity in how people present, and the way that they learn and the way they engage and the way that they can create behaviors is also different. So yeah, that'll be really exciting to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just normalizing with the parent as well, like a lot of the time, by the time they get there, they're going to be so stressed about it.
Yeah.
So just being like, that's okay. Like, you know, this is quite common. Like, you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
It might be something more than just, you know, fussy eating. Like, let's have a look. And then that can just be really validating.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
your feelings are so valid here.
I love that, because sometimes it's like, man, have I created a child that is like this much of a fussy eater? Is this all on me? And there's a lot of self-blame, a lot of shame, a lot of stress. So you're so right. Like, it's always seen as like the parent blame, well, in how the parent responds as well. So yeah, I think to validate those feelings, those stress points, and be able to ease that is such an important part of our role. So yeah, awesome. I'm aware of time, so thank you so much, everyone. And sorry about that blunder at the start. That was me taking full responsibility. But it was great that our Compete Performance page got to hear us talk about dietitian and nutrition things. So anyway. All right. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.